Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell, mom of 18 and executive director of the Doula Co-op of Nevada. With more than 15 years in birth work, I've had the privilege of walking beside families through life's transitions. My work centers on connection, community, and amplifying voices that too often go unheard. Each of these episodes is an honest conversation about the messy, beautiful, and transformative experiences that shape us as parents and as people. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you to the incredible guests who show up with courage and authenticity to share their stories with us. Let's dive right in. Welcome to Becoming Parents. I am on with Siena Dean. How are you today?
I am fabulous. How are you?
Great. I am really excited, and I want you to just jump in and start sharing your parenting journey.
Yeah, so I am now in the process of becoming a mom twice over, but I'll go back, thank you, to the beginning. And my parenting journey started with a very loving spouse who was absolutely ready to become a parent and step into that journey. And I was terrified.
Oh,
I was scared of what it meant for my career. I was scared of what it meant for my mental health. Every time I was online, I would see all these scary things about pregnancy and delivery, and I was spiraling. And I have maybe 2, 3 years ago relocated from where my mom lived, and my mom and I are extremely close. And she shared with me, whenever you become pregnant, you have to tell me in person. This isn't a phone call. But my mom didn't live near me, and I tell my mom everything. And so for 2 to 3 weeks, I was carrying this weight, and I didn't want to burden my husband with it because he was so excited. So I didn't want to add my stress and anxiety to him. And so I felt so alone. I would go on these walks, cry for hours, and just not know how to process this at all until actually one day I school was beginning to start and I was crossing the street and I broke down crying and this cross guard, it was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, no, I'm not." And I told my whole life story to this random cross guard and he's just trying to usher kids across the street. And that's when I realized I needed help. And so I eventually found a doula slash mental health therapist who really helped me realign and center myself on what it meant to be a mother. And it was okay that your life was changing, it was changing for the better, and to let go of all the negativity that you saw online. So I actually turned off all social platforms and just focused on internal. And I'm like, let's mentally prepare for this. And in that, realizing that I wanted a completely natural delivery. I didn't want any medication, any interventions. I was going to do it at the hospital, but I was like, I have to fully believe in my body in order to get through this. And that's what I did. I was able to deliver my son. And the start of my labor, it was so interesting because I was so calm, no one believed I was in labor. And they were like, you must, like, this must be, false. I actually remember on the way to the hospital, my husband didn't even call out of work because he's like, they're going to send us home. And for those who know, by the time I got to the hospital, I was 8 centimeters dilated. And I walked into, I'm like, I'm ready. And all the nurses, 3 people had to check. And they're like, how are you standing? How is this your first? And I was just like, I had to be that secure and confident in myself, or else I would not been able to handle it. And that journey changed my life. So
when did you finally tell your mom?
yeah, so it was thankfully it was around the time she was visiting, so it was like 2 to 3 weeks from that point.
Okay.
And I was like, you don't know how hard this was. I'm like, we're never doing this again. Next time you're gonna have to FaceTime. I can do FaceTime, but I cannot wait this long to not tell you. But it was such a beautiful moment. She cried, I cried. I took her to a restaurant. The people in the restaurant cried. It was a wonderful moment, but it was not worth the stress prior to getting there.
I mean, I agree with that. And I'm guessing that you FaceTimed her for the second one.
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. You also, though, had that 3 weeks to kind of fall apart and figure things out too, which I think probably retrospectively was a blessing in disguise. Is that in that time period is when you like you went offline, which is a really hard thing for people to do. So what was that like?
Yeah, so during that time, it was when I went offline and I run communications. I run a lot of different things for my organization, but I'm the head of marketing for my team. And so explaining to my boss, I'm like, I will not know what's going on. I will schedule these posts, but I'm not commenting. I'm not. And she was just like, okay, how long? I was like, I don't know, but I can't do it right now. And thankfully, that was in a more professional setting. So that algorithm wasn't tailored to all the horrors of pregnancy like my social platforms were. But yeah, it was very difficult,
Yep.
but also it was only difficult for a few days. And then the peace of realizing, everyone's different and thinking about like what was my body capable of versus constantly comparing myself to everything I saw out there. And to your point, in retrospect, it really did give me that time because I didn't realize how much I still leaned on my family as a crutch,
Mm.
right? To handle those heavy burdens that I wasn't familiar with. And taking that time to do it on my own, even without my spouse, helped me realize how strong I was.
See, I love that. I love that part of it. And knowing that because unplugging from social media, I have a daughter who does it every January. She goes social media,
Mm.
deletes everything, right? And it just at this point, we all know it's no big deal. Don't send her stuff, but she's like, it's just a detox. And I think
Mhm.
for those for those of us that detox, it is it's almost frightening and then it's a relief.
It is. It is.
I used to tell clients, if you're getting information on TikTok, we have a problem. Like you gotta cut off. You've got to cut off because I think pregnancy, labor and delivery and postpartum, more than other stuff that women go through, everything women go through, I think it's like showing up at the junior high school mean girls table.
Yep. Yep.
Like you are never, no matter what you decide, cloth diapers, disposable diapers, breastfeeding, but it does not
You
matter.
will always be wrong.
You're always going to be wrong to somebody.
Yep.
So, I just tell people really figure out what works for your family and stick to it because you're never going to do it right. It is literally like junior high school. It's terrible. I hate it. I hate that, especially women in times that we should be supporting and banding together and becoming a community, we're actually tearing each other down. And that's another terrible part of that whole social media situation. Yeah,
Agreed.
not fun. I also now I want to talk about like being in a good mental state because I think
Mm.
I had natural childbirth 4 times. There's nothing special about me. I
Yeah.
have some like do you have a high pain tolerance? I don't know. I mean,
Right.
is
I don't
that
like
even a
pain.
thing? I don't know. I was more afraid of pain meds than I was of labor.
Mm.
I was more stubborn about what I wanted than to succumbing to what was easier for someone else. Like,
Right.
no matter how you say it, what was it for you? Because that meant it is a mental game. It doesn't matter.
Oh, it is. It is. Like, it is so interesting because with my doula, we prepped all of my like support partner. My mom was in my delivery and my husband. And it was like, you have to stay firm. And as soon as I checked into the hospital, they were like, so what are we giving you?
Right.
And all of the prep on their side, they was like, well, we have to listen to the doctors and nurses. They know best. And I was firm. I was like, I am fine. I am going to do this naturally. And what surprised me, the most pushback that I received was from the nurses. And they were like, how are you? Okay, we can give you a little something. Like I felt like I've never been in a drug situation, but I'm like, it just felt very pushy.
They are. I'm in Reno, Nevada, and we have a hospital here that's so pro
Mhm.
doulas. We work
Yeah.
shift work there. We're on 10-hour shifts. We are badged. We can be in the OR. Like I love the programs I get to run. Even with that, they had me come in and talk about physiologic birth. And I'm like, by the time a woman gets settled in her room, she's been asked 3 times
Yep.
what pain medication she wants. If
Hmm.
she comes in with a birth plan that says she doesn't want pain medication, she doesn't need to know her options. She'll
Hmm.
let you know. If she changes her mind, she is going to be the first one to let you know.
Yes, right.
That they walk in to triage to get checked. Um, so if we admit you today, what kind of pain management do you want? Right?
That's
Like that's
right.
a, and
Yeah.
I'm like, that makes women in labor who are in labor also,
Hmm.
let's not forget you're in labor.
Right.
Like maybe not the time to have these conversations.
It
That's
really wasn't.
it makes her feel like she has to be on the defensive against the very organization that she believes has her best interest at heart. She's already fighting you. And really, if you had changed your mind, you would have been the number one first person that would have told that nurse you changed your mind.
Absolutely. I was like, I am able to communicate everything else perfectly fine.
You
So
didn't
don't
suddenly become
worry.
a pain management, you know,
Right.
dummy.
Yeah, so I think for me, the primary thing, honestly, was my faith. I am faith-based, like through my decision making, and I just had this peace that I was going to be okay. And all of my faith had to be, all through the entire delivery focused on that. And I'm like, anything that takes me out of there is
Right.
I'm relying on the wrong thing. And so for me, I just had to stay tuned in to what I knew was going to get me through. And I get the same questions like, do you have a high pain tolerance? But for me, it wasn't about me anymore. It was,
Right.
I was relinquishing it to a higher power. And I was like, long as I stay focused on that, I'll be fine. But in terms of the advocacy, I think it goes back to my stubbornness. I was always one that like peer pressure did not work on me. The more they doubled down, the angrier I got,
Yep.
especially during delivery. So I actually enacted a no talking policy during, I was like,
Oh
no
my
one talks
God.
unless it's an emergency. So by the time my doctor actually showed up, the nurse is like, no, we don't talk. And like, wait, what? What is this? But and like anytime you're saying the wrong thing, so
Just
no one
don't talk.
can.
That is amazing. I mean, I'm faith-based too. Regardless of that, though, I had one woman, she said, you're going to be the only person in the room. She was a surrogate, so there was no partner, right?
Mhm.
I don't want anyone else in the room. I barely want the nurse to be in the room. I don't want to be touched. And we're only talking if I initiate it. And I'm
Mhm.
like, this is literally the weirdest birth. It goes against everything in my mama human nature. Like, I need to cuddle you. Obviously, like,
Yeah.
I need to do hip squeezes. Nope. But she was adamant and she let everybody know. Same thing. She let the nurse know when she came in. I do not like to be touched and I want to be left alone. I want it quiet and I want it dark. This is the fourth time I've done this. I know what I want. And they
Mhm.
were like, okay.
Yeah.
So when you're really firm about what you want, everybody backs down. But you
Oh
should,
yeah.
it's a shame it takes that much though.
It is, but it's that confidence muscle that
Yeah.
nothing prepares that confidence, in my opinion, like going through pregnancy and then going through birth, because the level of advocacy, the level of self-assurance you need to get through this, it showed
Yeah.
up leaps and bounds. By the time I turned back to work, people were like, who is this woman? Like,
Isn't that okay? Well, I want to finish that by saying, like, with labor, with pain tolerance,
Mhm,
I always like the first labor is on average 24 hours. It can be
mhm,
longer, it can be 8 hours. I mean, we don't know, but just think when I thought about 24 hours, I'm like, I've had really bad days. I've had
mhm.
24-hour blocks in my life that I don't ever want to relive.
Right.
Nobody handed me a baby at the end. Like, I'm
That's
really sorry you had a hard day. Here's a baby.
Here's the baby, right? That is so true.
And I just always thought this is going to be a really hard day
Mhm.
with a purpose,
Yeah.
like there's a
Yeah.
purpose to this. And at the end, I'm going to be holding this human being that I created. And you don't get that on any other hard day. So
I
I'm
love that.
everybody has to find their mental fortitude when they want that. And I
Mhm.
also know that when women talk and they're like, I want an unmedicated birth, but if it gets too much, then I know I can have something. And I say 100% of women that say that have medication.
Had medication. Yeah.
uh, and that's not a put down. I'm letting you know it is It's not if you can tolerate this physically. We can all tolerate this physically.
Mhm.
Really, we can. It's crazy what we can tolerate physically. If you're not in the mental game, if you're using that in your back pocket, you're going to use it. So you either need to decide, is it worth changing your mind, your headspace, or
Right.
deciding that medication's not a big deal, because
Yeah.
there's failure in that, you know?
Mhm.
Tell me about your first labor. You got through it, you were unmedicated. Were there specific things that helped? The no talking is my favorite thing I've ever heard. And I want you to take that and lead into how that changed your personality and your confidence and people at work saying, who are you?
Yeah, honestly, going back to the go like as firm as not talking, because at one point I swear there were like all these nurses when it was t near delivery just started showing up. Like I've never seen a room so full of nurses.
Yep.
Um, and they were all waiting. Like it was like you felt the adrenaline in the room and realizing that I still was in control of this moment. And I think oftentimes when you're in situations where you're expected to relinquish control, like when you're at the doctor's office or on a flight, but realizing that I still own this moment. And as much as I could, I was going to be a part of it. So from the direction of like how I was going to push, because they're ready. Everything is, this is their job. So they're prepared to tell you exactly what to do, when to do it. And I had to stop and say, this is what my body's doing. And there was such a shift in realizing, like, oh, we're taking guidance from the patient versus telling the patient how this is going to go. And since it was such a natural, like I don't know, because that wasn't the details was not a part of the my birth plan.
Right.
But there was this innate feeling that I'm like, okay, my body's telling me this. This is what's
Yep.
happening. Um, and after that, you can't, for me, I couldn't take it back. I was like, there's a new part of me that was unlocked of being
Ah,
very intentional about how I felt about things, communicating that, and being okay with however the cookies would crumble. Because I'm like, when I was supposed to be at my most vulnerable, I still had that strength. So speaking up in a meeting now, there's nothing,
nothing.
right?
That's no big deal.
Right. And that's what I often tell, because I work with anyone from early career to executives, and I'll work with moms, and they're just like, how do you keep that confidence? I'm like, you already have it. And when I actually have them talk about, their experiences through either pregnancy or delivery or even parenting, you have to rely on that confidence because now you're stewarding a child, right? And I don't know if people's children are like mine. If you are not firm, it's a suggestion. So,
Yeah,
and
100%.
even when you are, it might still be a suggestion. So for me, after having that moment of when you're expected to be the most vulnerable, and I reclaimed that confidence and gave direction, um, any moment that you put me in after that, I waited till I had my own thoughts and opinion before people gave them to me. And I was confident in communicating that, and that completely shift how I went about my day to day, even to the point where when I returned, and it was time for evaluations, I advocated for promotion. And people were like, that's unheard of. You went on leave. I'm like, yes, but I still do a very good job at what I do.
Right.
And I actually received that promotion. And I think honestly is because, they rely on people not having that confidence
Yeah.
and willing to advocate for themselves. And I was so like I had this renewed um confidence in my abilities and being able to speak to that pregnancy gave me, and I have hold on to it ever since because it has made my life way better than it was before. So
Well, and I think you can do that in humility. You can
yeah,
ask
of
for what
course.
you want and stand up. It doesn't mean that you're being malicious or manipulative or rude. There's something in women not wanting to state how we feel and ask for what we want and stand up for ourselves. And in the hospital recently, my daughter had a baby and she gave birth standing up, and the nurse did the catch because it happens it didn't happen as fast as they think I was like, it's happening. And when she went in for her 6 week postpartum, they're like, yeah, we want to talk about this because we've never had anyone deliver standing up. And I said,
Mm.
that's because you never ask.
Asked.
You
Yeah.
never give the woman the ability to tell you what she wants or just to listen and do what her body wants, because
Right.
there's this list of common positions. We don't know
Hmm.
which one we're going to want till we get there.
Right.
Every
Exactly. Until
single
our
time.
body.
Right. It can be
Hmm.
different every time. But when a woman is unmedicated and she's given the opportunity to just tune in, she will
Hmm.
let you know without hesitation. But if she's constantly being forced
Right.
to sit up in the seat with the little
Yeah.
bar and drop her feet on the pedal, like, you're never going to have another experience because you're forcing her to not listen to herself and stick up. Just sit back and ask her what she wants, and you'd be
Right.
amazed the positions that women deliver.
Hmm.
It's so crazy. Like, have you not known that women have been doing this for thousands of years? Like,
About.
do you think they all sat up in the bed with the squat bar? I'm
Right.
unclear where you're. But I just think women don't stick up for it, and no one asks because they want it to be convenient to them.
Good. Yes.
But
Yes.
work is the same way.
Hmm. It is. It is. And it went back to even when I started my in at my organization, it was the policy. They were like, your first on average, people were promoted every 2.5 to 3 years.
Mhm.
And in the first year, I was like, well, I'm ready for the next step. So I don't want, people to be mistaken. I've always had a higher degree of confidence than your average person. Um, but I have found I've had closer relationships, especially in my career, by advocating for myself. And to your point, with humility, but I approach it on the human level. Like, why are we why are we focusing on a system that we aren't sure still works? And when you approach it in that way, people think like, huh, well, if you are qualified and if you have done the job just because this is how the charter was written, or this is just how things have done, is that why we're following the policy?
Right.
And, it allows people to start to, I find, look at things differently from a different side of their brain versus like very mechanical, very logical to more empathetic, more human. And once we're there, then we can have any type of conversation because we're connecting
Mhm.
as humans versus like, through this organizational hierarchy
The flow chart.
that's in
You have to
place.
use a flow chart.
Right, yeah. I'm like, remove the flow chart, see me, and let's talk about it.
There's a reason to have that. And the hospital does the same thing, right? They have the standard of care,
Yes, yes.
because a woman can come in that's never had prenatal, who's homeless, who's a drug user, who's like, insert all of these things here, and they look at the worst case scenario and how do we
Hmm.
treat the worst case scenario. That is really vital because it protects that mom and baby and it protects the medical professionals in the hospital. I get it. I
Hmm.
get the standard of care. Same thing with the flow chart at offices. We create this because we have to have some sort of roadmap on how are we going to get from here, point A to point B. The problem is when you force everyone into and it doesn't make sense. Like, well, you have to wait till 2.5 years. You need to have 2.3 children. You need to be in labor for this long at 6 centimeters. You need to, like, we don't all read the manual and stick to the manual. And so I'm always, I mean, I've told the hospital, like, I'm grateful for the standard of care because it's
Hmm.
there. And that, so then we know how can we deviate because this person doesn't fit that mold or they want
Right.
something different. How do we adjust the standard of care so everyone's still protected and everyone's still getting what they want? It's the no talk policy,
Right.
obviously. I mean, that's all we have to do. We just, everyone, no talk policy,
No talk.
my favorite. But really, I mean, like, it's important to have a standard, and then it's important to just look at the person that you're working with and make a decision from there too. So
Absolutely, yes. Have a baseline and realize that the baseline doesn't have to be final, right? So the same qualities that are expected before someone can reach promotion might be valid, but understanding that might not happen in the expected time.
right. Right. Tell me, how long has it been since you had your first baby?
Yes, so he is now 20 months. So,
Oh, yay. Okay, so you have the almost 2 year natural
mhm.
spread, right? What was it like different moving into this pregnancy? Because it had to be
Mm.
hugely different.
It was extremely different. One, even though like going back to the first, it was kind of expected. I just wasn't prepared.
Correct.
You always think you're ready until you find out, and then you're like, wait, I
Yep.
thought I had more time. And then the second, we weren't prepared. So for me, I had done a lot of that work of getting ready. And then now it was like my husband's time to think about like what does it mean to have like two under two? What does it mean to eventually we found out we're having a girl. Our first is a boy. So yeah, he was like, what does it mean to have like a little girl? And so it's been interesting seeing and being able to support him now through this journey. But with this pregnancy, a lot earlier, I got to be in tune with my body and just celebrate. And unfortunately, I felt like even once I had my doula and we were working on my mental health, it took me a lot longer. So it was towards the latter part of the second trimester when I finally started embracing motherhood and what all that could entail. And from very early on, I'm like, no, I have two children. Like, this is where my life is. I was mentally prepared to claim it. It was real for me, very early. Um, and in that, I had so much celebration and so much peace and so much joy. And, they say the pregnancy glow. It came very early for me because I was like, I know I can do this.
Yep.
And it was such a different state of mind that like I this time I didn't have to turn off socials because even when my algorithm would try to throw these crazy things, they never stayed. It's like this isn't working. She's no longer spending time on this. And then instead I had all these wonderful, childcare and birthing experience and a lot of food on my algorithm. But
As it should be.
right, like all these meals. But in that, it's been such a beautiful experience, and that I'm so appreciative that I'm able to have because every day I'm wake up just excited to meet her. Like, and without that anxiety, I know it's going to be, it's still going to be a journey. And all the moments actually, like I was more sick this time. It was more stressful in technical terms. But I just had this mental fortitude ready established that it was like, oh, to your earlier point, at the end of this, I get a baby.
Yeah.
Like I get a baby that I get to keep and raise and so when you realize that's what's coming, even on those, through morning sickness and all of that, you can just look forward and realize that like at the end of this, I already know it's worth it because I'm obsessed with my son. And so adding that, the only part that I did struggle with in all honesty was because of that closeness that I have with my son, thinking about how like my heart would expand to love this other baby was a little challenging for me because I'm ready to give him the world. Do I need two worlds? But you know, I saw this post and it really helped because it said that, we think sometimes when you have another child, your heart has to make rooms, but really what happens is like they get their own heart, so you just add a new 100% to love your child, and that really helped in my framing. But yeah, it's been great.
I think the one thing that you can't get through without just getting through it is the first pregnancy is a lot of fear of the unknown.
Unknown, right? Yeah.
Like you don't, I mean, you can be as prepared as you think you are, and it's still unpredictable. And
Hmm.
like if there are 12 side effects or symptoms or things that could happen, and everybody gets seven, but we don't know what seven you're going to get, it's kind of like labor roulette. We don't know. Is it like breastfeeding was easy? It was a nightmare the next time. It was, you just don't know what to expect. But the first time, you've never done any of this. Your body has never done any of this. And the second time, I feel like women are like, oh no, yeah, we got this. We've done this
Yeah.
before. We got it dialed. I don't have fear of the unknown. I know how this ends. It's, so, but you can do things like you did things with your mental health and with a doula.
Mhm.
You can do things to make it better, but there really is no way through but through.
It's
Like
but through it. Yes.
you just kind of have to have the first experience. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, I think that's why a lot of women they give birth and they're like, oh no, this is going to be different the next time around, because they're not happy with how it went. But
Yeah.
you were able to get your support and find your voice that first time, and that's really fantastic. What
It
do
makes
you do
a
for
lot of difference.
work? I have no idea what you do for work.
Yeah, so I work for this national nonprofit. I'm on their alumni engagement team, and the focus of our nonprofit is preparing people to excel in corporate America. So we work from anywhere from early career all the way to the executive level. We have a network of about 13,000 now. So I help manage their career progression. So anytime they want, promotions or figure out work-life balance or financial literacy, things of that nature, they come to us.
And how funny that the job that you had, no wonder you asked for a promotion. Holy cow. You're like, oh no, I just did this thing.
Right.
So I know how to do this thing. Even
Right,
like,
exactly.
wow, how crazy when your career and your life that wasn't connected at all
Mm.
becomes so connected
Mm.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it helped to deepen my purpose, honestly. Because just to go back a little bit, I was in that unique case when I graduated, getting ready to graduate college. My family told me about this thing called purpose, and they were like, we really want you to enjoy the work that you do. And I'm like, that's unheard of. People go to their job and they find happiness and purpose outside of work. So that sent me on a crazy journey that eventually landed me in a place where I love what I do. But then when I added this layer of becoming a parent, I realized I'm helping people way later than I want, because
Oh,
a lot of the tools that I pull on, I started building from childhood. And I think of how isolated so many of these kids are nowadays. And I'm like, this is where, it really had awakened a passion for me to invest any of my excess energy and time in figuring out how do we rebuild these systems. Because I'm seeing even with my 18-month-old, when he connects with sorry, now 20 months, time is moving too fast. Um, but when he connects with babies his age and they still have this openness and they want to connect and like touch and all these things, and then by the time they're three, if he's exposed to a 3-year-old, they're often afraid of human interaction. And I'm like, there's something happening when humans are innately, we are meant to connect, and we're losing that. So that is where I still focused on, future readiness, but investing in the future of now and who's going to become the future. So to make sure they still have the tools that they need one day is really where I find myself making that shift towards.
I think it's even more challenging now. My oldest biological daughter is 18 years older than my youngest. So I have one
Mm.
turning 34 in April, and my youngest is 16. And there's an 8-year gap between her and the next one. And I think social media, like my older kids eventually got a phone, and it was a flip phone, and it was just for me, for texting
Right.
a parent, right? And then it had little things on it, but they grew into
Right, absolutely.
their phone use or
Mhm.
device use in general. I mean, I remember dial up back in the day, and that's all those kids from 23 to 33 remember
Yep.
going through that process where she was the first generation born with a phone in her hand that has social media, like not a
Mhm.
flip phone, like legitimately. And I cannot believe how much less, I don't want to say smart, but common sense. If they read it on social media, they believe it.
Believe it. It's automatic. Yes.
There's zero fact checking.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, she's like, I want to make cake pops from scratch. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean to you? Well, you buy the sugar cookies at Walmart, which we never allow, and you mix them with cream cheese and form them into a ball, and then you roll them into chocolate. And I was like, what about that is
It's
homemade?
scratch.
That makes me want to retch my guts up. Like I cannot. When in what world would that be like? That's a silly thing, right? But if they see it,
Mhm.
then they believe it. There's not any fact checking. And although they seem connected to everything, they are more isolated than we've ever been. And it's terrifying.
It is, you are speaking to my heart right now because even just look at the baseline of critical thinking.
Yep.
I have younger siblings and I spend a lot of time volunteering with the younger kids. And it's just like, to your point, as soon as you say it, it is fact. And I'm just like, you don't see the wires connecting anymore to say, like, what are my actual thoughts on this? Because they're constantly fed information that tells them how to think. And I'm like, we have to remove that. How are we advancing in technology? And yet humans are becoming less equipped. I'm like, we have to reverse this. So yeah, this could be an
This could
episode
be
in
a whole nother
itself.
episode, a completely different
But
episode. But it is crazy. And I think because I've raised almost like pretty much two generations, I look at my husband, I'm like, how did we raise this one? Like what
well,
where did we go wrong? Like I'm just we didn't. We can't stop the influx from outside.
yeah.
Even if you're equipping them with information, it's just crazy. So you're working more on that now as well.
Yes, yeah, now it's building the technologies that still enable connection, but healthy connection. Because you think about a lot of these systems that are being built, they aren't being built with children in mind. They're just the byproduct. Like, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, name it, it wasn't built for children. And so I'm like, what does that look like when you are actually building technology through the lens of what children need and through parents that understand that we know it's not going away, but if it's going to have this level of access to my child, it needs to be supporting them. It cannot be steering them in the wrong direction. And so that's where I'm focused on because at the end of the day, like to your point, it's not going anywhere.
Right.
But the way we're building it is not geared towards our children, and that is what doesn't make sense to me. I think of using, Meta as an example when um, Mark Zuckerberg was like, "Oh no, I don't let my children use social media," but I'm like, "You built them." So, and you have these people building now these AIs, and they're like, "Oh well, I just accepted my child will never be as smart." And so I was like, "You need, yeah, as these platforms." And it's just like, you need people that still care about
Yeah.
their children and, starting with your child, but expanding to children in general, to create healthy systems for them to learn and to connect. You
They
also
need
mentioned the
to.
level, right?
They
Like
need
it's
to connect.
the level of isolation is unheard of. We actually just took my son to the park yesterday, and there were some kids playing that came together, and then there was another bunch only on their tablets. And then the kids playing together could never expand the group. It was like, I came with these three people. These are the only three people I know. And I was just like, that's such a different time than when I was younger, when you knew everyone. Like, and, in 5 minutes, you had a new best friend. So how do we use technology as a tool versus what it has become? Um, so
Yeah. Sienna, thank you so much for being on and chatting. I can't wait to hear about this next baby.
thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited.
I would be too. Thanks for being on.
Of course.